In the wild world of reality TV, few people have ever felt as raw and as real as Dwayne "Dog" Chapman. For 8 seasons, we invited this leather-clad, mullet-sporting, mace-wielding bounty hunter into our living rooms. We watched him and his family track down fugitives with a mix of brute force and surprising compassion, always ending the hunt with a capture, a cigarette, and a prayer. He was the most famous bounty hunter on the planet, a character who seemed indestructible. But while Dog was busy hunting fugitives, a much more relentless predator was hunting him. Tragedy. It's followed him from his earliest days as a teenage outlaw to the absolute peak of his fame. It has taken his family, threatened his health, and challenged his faith in ways no camera could ever truly capture. To the world, he's a tough-as-nails fugitive hunter who always gets his man. But behind the iconic sunglasses and leather vests is the story of Dwayne Chapman, a man who has been relentlessly hunted by personal tragedy, a story that has only gotten more devastating with time. To really get the man who became Dog, you have to go back to the beginning, Denver, Colorado, where Dwayne Lee Chapman was born on February 2, 1953. His childhood was a tense mix of strict Pentecostal religion and even stricter discipline. His mother, Barbara, was a devout Sunday school teacher, while his father, Wesley, was a Korean War veteran who brought the toughness of the battlefield home with him. In his memoir, You Can Run But You Can't Hide, Chapman described a childhood filled with brutal beatings from his father, which he believed were meant to toughen him up. He wrote, "I was a young boy looking for love and approval from my father. I was desperate for his affection, so I ignored the pain." That desperate search for a place to belong would define his youth. Feeling like an outcast in his own home, he went looking for a new family on the streets. At just 15, Dwayne Chapman ran away and found what he was looking for with the Devil's Disciples, an outlaw motorcycle club. For a kid who felt powerless, the gang gave him an identity and a sense of strength. It's where he first earned the nickname Dog, a name that would stick for life. But this new identity pulled him deeper into a world of crime that would lead to a moment that changed everything. That moment came in 1976 in Pampa, Texas. Chapman, then 23, was with a group of associates trying to buy marijuana from a man named Jerry Oliver. The deal went south. Fast. While Chapman has always said he was just waiting in the getaway car, one of his friends shot and killed Oliver. Under Texas law, all parties involved in a felony that leads to a death are held responsible. Chapman was charged with first-degree murder. Even though he didn't pull the trigger, the jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 5 years in a Texas state penitentiary. Prison was a brutal wake-up call, but it was inside those walls that the idea of the bounty hunter was born. As Dog tells it, he tackled an inmate who was trying to escape, stopping a guard from shooting him. A corrections officer praised him, saying he should be a bounty hunter. Those words stuck. After serving 18 months, Chapman was paroled. He walked out a convicted felon, legally banned from ever owning a firearm, a restriction that would ironically shape his unique hands-on style of catching fugitives. He'd lost his freedom and years of his life, but he'd found a new calling. The outlaw was about to become the lawman. Fresh out of the Texas State Penitentiary, Dwayne Chapman was a man with a new mission. The words from that corrections officer had taken root. He was going to hunt men just like his former self. He knew how fugitives thought and where they hid because he'd been one of them. His early career was a whirlwind. His family life was complicated, a tangled string of marriages and kids that would later become a huge part of his public image. Before he found lasting love with Beth, he'd been married multiple times and had several children, including Dwayne Lee II and Leland, who would become his trusted partners in the hunt. This growing, complex family was both a source of strength and future conflict. The real turning point came when he moved to Hawaii. On the islands, a world away from Texas and Colorado, Dog started building his empire. It was there he met Beth Smith, a force of nature who became not just his romantic partner, but his business partner. Together, they started Daquin Bail Bonds in Honolulu, the family-run headquarters for his legendary bounty hunting. Beth was the brains of the operation, the sharp-tongued, business-savvy matriarch who managed the books, took the calls, and often joined Dog on the most dangerous takedowns. Her style was as iconic as his, with her platinum blonde hair, high heels, and a no-nonsense attitude that could stare down the toughest criminals. In Hawaii, Dog's reputation became almost mythical. He wasn't just a bounty hunter, he was a character. He perfected his signature look, the blonde mullet, dark sunglasses, and leather vests. Since he couldn't carry a gun, he relied on non-lethal weapons like pepper spray and his team, his posse, which was his own family. Their hunts were chaotic, but effective. And he wasn't just catching bail jumpers, he was giving them a shot at redemption. Captures often ended with a heart-to-heart, a cigarette, and a prayer, offering them the same chance to turn their lives around that he had taken. He had transformed himself from an ex-con into a local hero. But an international manhunt for a depraved fugitive would soon put him on a collision course with Hollywood. The case that launched Dwayne "Dog" Chapman into the global spotlight was the hunt for Andrew Luster. Luster, the great-grandson of cosmetics icon Max Factor, was a convicted serial rapist who had drugged and assaulted multiple women. In January 2003, during his trial, Luster cut off his ankle monitor and disappeared, forfeiting a $1 million bail. He was convicted in his absence and sentenced to 124 years in prison, but he was gone. For Dog, this was the ultimate challenge. The reward was huge, but the bragging rights were priceless. After getting a tip that Luster was hiding out in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, Dog, his son Leland, and their associate Tim Chapman headed south. They knew bounty hunting is illegal in Mexico and considered kidnapping, but it was a risk they were willing to take. On June 18, 2003, they spotted Luster at a taco stand and moved in. They subdued him with pepper spray, cuffed him, and threw him in a truck, planning to drive him straight to the U.S. border. But their victory didn't last long. Local police, tipped off to a possible kidnapping, swarmed their vehicle. In a wild twist of irony, the world's greatest bounty hunter was arrested by Mexican authorities and thrown in a jail cell right alongside the fugitive he'd just captured. The incident caused an international media frenzy. Luster was quickly sent back to the U.S. to start his prison sentence, but Dog and his team were stuck in a Mexican jail, facing serious charges. The story was irresistible, the wild-looking ex-con who succeeded where the FBI had failed. After a tense legal battle, the charges were dropped, and Dog and his team returned to the U.S. as heroes. That Luster capture was the audition of a lifetime, and Hollywood was watching. The intense media interest led directly to a deal with A&E, and in 2004, Dog the Bounty Hunter premiered. It was an instant hit. The show wasn't just about the thrill of the chase. It was a family drama set against the backdrop of Hawaii's criminal underworld. Viewers were hooked on the dynamic between Dog, the tough but tender patriarch, Beth, the fierce matriarch, and their sons, Leland and Dwayne Lee. What really set the show apart was what happened after the arrest, the pep talks in the van, where Dog offered his captives a shot at turning their lives around. This mix of action, family drama, and unexpected compassion made him a household name. He had reached the top, but his personal life was about to be hit by a tragedy that would cast a long shadow over his success. At the peak of his fame, Dog seemed to be living a charmed life, but behind the scenes, tragedy was brewing. The first major blow came on May 19, 2006, just one day before he was set to marry his longtime partner Beth in a huge ceremony in Hawaii. His 23-year-old daughter, Barbara Katie Chapman, was killed in a car accident near Fairbanks, Alaska. The circumstances were heartbreaking. Barbara was a passenger in a stolen SUV that went off the road and rolled, killing both her and her boyfriend. Authorities suspected drugs or alcohol may have been involved. Dog was faced with an impossible choice: call off the wedding or go on with it in the shadow of his daughter's death. He and his surviving children made the painful decision to go ahead with the ceremony, celebrating both the wedding and Barbara's life. The wedding happened, but it was a somber event, a celebration forever tied to a profound loss. The second crisis was a self-inflicted wound that nearly destroyed everything he'd built. In 2007, a private phone call between Dog and his son Tucker was leaked to the National Enquirer. In the recording, Dog was heard repeatedly using a racial slur while arguing with his son about his son's black girlfriend. The public backlash was immediate and severe. A&E suspended production of Dog the Bounty Hunter, and it looked like his career was over. It was a major wake-up call. Dog went on a public apology tour, appearing on shows like Larry King Live, to express his regret. He claimed the words came from a place of anger and ignorance, not true hatred, but the damage was done. The controversy exposed deep problems within the Chapman family for all to see. A&E eventually brought the show back, but things were never quite the same. The audience was now aware of the darkness that could surface in this family. Dog had survived the storm, but it took a toll. His greatest personal battle, however, was still to come. For years, Beth Chapman was the anchor of the family. She was the strategist and the matriarch, who held everything together. Her fierce loyalty was as critical to their success as Dog's larger-than-life presence. Their love story was the heart of the show, which is why the news in September 2017 hit their fans so hard. Beth was diagnosed with stage 2 throat cancer. True to form, Beth faced the diagnosis head-on. She underwent a grueling 13-hour surgery to remove the tumor, which was documented in an A&E special, Dog and Beth, Fight of Their Lives. For a short time, there was hope when she was declared cancer-free. It seemed like she'd won, but the relief didn't last. In November 2018, doctors discovered the cancer had returned and spread to her lungs. It was now stage 4. The prognosis was grim, but Beth refused to give up. Instead, she chose to live her final days doing what she loved, hunting fugitives. This final chapter was documented in the WGN America series, Dogs Most Wanted. It was a raw, unflinching look at her battle with the disease. Viewers saw her, grappling with chemotherapy, her famous blonde hair gone, but her spirit as strong as ever. She still insisted on joining the team on hunts, sometimes directing from the car, her voice raspy but her commands still sharp. It was a heartbreaking journey to watch. Dog, the man who always seemed in control, was now helpless as he watched the love of his life slip away. In late June 2019, Beth was placed in a medically induced coma in a Honolulu hospital. On the morning of June 26, 2019, Beth Chapman died at the age of 51. Dog announced her death on Twitter. "It's 5:32 in Hawaii. This is the time she would wake up to go hike Coco Head Mountain. Only today she hiked the stairway to heaven. We all love you, Beth. See you on the other side." Beth's death left a massive hole in the family and the business. For Dog, the loss was world-shattering. His grief was public and intense, and he openly admitted to having suicidal thoughts. The world watched as the toughest man on TV wept, a bounty hunter who had finally met an enemy he couldn't beat. After Beth's death, Dwayne Chapman was a man completely lost. He spoke about his crippling grief and admitted he'd lost the will too, live. His internal turmoil soon turned into a physical crisis that nearly killed him. Just 3 months after Beth died in September 2019, Dog was hospitalized for chest pains. He first brushed it off as a broken heart, but the reality was much more serious. Doctors diagnosed him with a pulmonary embolism, a life-threatening blockage in his lungs. On an emotional episode of The Dr. Oz Show, Dr. Oz showed him the scans and delivered a chilling warning: "You're a ticking time bomb." Despite the warning, Dog was resistant to treatment, admitting his fear and his loss of will to fight after Beth was gone. His personal life also became messy and public. He started a close relationship with Moon Angel, a longtime family friend, which caused a huge rift with his daughter Lisa, who accused Angel of trying to replace her mom. The feud played out on social media, leading to a bizarre TV moment on the Dr. Oz show, where Dog seemed to propose to Angel on air. They both later said it wasn't a real proposal, but the incident showed just how vulnerable Dog was. But then a new light entered his life. He found an unexpected connection with Francie Frayne, a rancher from Colorado. Their meeting felt like fate. Francie had also recently lost her spouse, Bob, to cancer, just 6 months before Beth passed. Dog had actually called her home trying to hire her late husband for a job, and Francie had to break the news that Bob had died. In that shared experience of grief, they found a powerful bond. Their relationship gave Dog a path out of the darkness. He had found someone who not only understood his pain, but also shared his deep Christian faith. They got engaged in May 2020 and were married in September 2021. It seemed like a second chance at happiness after so much heartbreak. But that future would soon be tested by yet another unthinkable tragedy. With Francie by his side, Dog started to build a new life. He moved from Hawaii, splitting his time between Colorado and Florida, and shifted his focus from bounty hunting to ministry work. He and Francie started a ministry called Light Up the Darkness and began traveling to share their story of finding faith through grief. He was still Dog the Bounty Hunter, but he was trying to use his platform for something new. This period of peace made the news that broke in the summer of 2025 all the more shocking. On the evening of July 19, 2025, tragedy struck his new, blended family in the worst way imaginable. In Naples, Florida, Dog's 13-year-old step-grandson, Anthony, was accidentally shot and killed. In a horrifying turn of events, the fatal shot was fired by his own father, Gregory Zecca, Francie's son and Dog's stepson, who had been a member of his bounty hunting team. The details that emerged were heartbreaking. The incident was described as a freak accident that happened in Gregory's apartment. According to police, Anthony suffered a single gunshot wound to the neck. First responders arrived to find he had lost a significant amount of blood, and he was pronounced dead later that night. The Collier County Sheriff's Office called it an isolated incident, and as of the initial reports, no arrests were made, though the investigation is ongoing. A family representative confirmed that Gregory Zecca, overwhelmed by guilt and sorrow, was placed on a psychiatric hold. For Dog and Francie, the loss was incomprehensible. They released a statement saying, "We are grieving as a family over this incomprehensible tragic accident, and we grieve the loss of our beloved grandson, Anthony." The tragedy was a devastating blow, a cruel echo of the violence and loss that had haunted Dog's entire life. A family built around capturing lawbreakers was now the victim of a fatal accident involving a gun in their own home. The story of Dwayne "Dog" Chapman feels like a constant cycle of rising from the ashes only to be hit by another wave of tragedy. He went from a teenage outlaw to a global TV star, but he has never been able to escape the grip of personal loss. He's captured thousands of fugitives, but he's lost a daughter, a wife, and now a grandson. Today, he stands as a complex and deeply tragic figure. Is he a flawed hero who finds redemption through faith? Or is he a man forever defined by the chaos that surrounds him? Maybe he's both. He continues to push forward, leaning on his new wife and his faith, trying to build a new legacy. But the shadows of his past are long, and the grief from his losses is a hunt that never ends. What do you think of Dog's incredible and tragic journey? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the stories you thought you knew, don't forget to like and subscribe.